It's time for Sunday school. Tonight we are looking at our lesson for Sunday, July the 26th. It's entitled, Pleasing God. God's people should seek to please Him in their attitudes and actions. And our focus text is Proverbs chapter 15, verse 33. That's the last verse in chapter 15. And then through verse 11 in chapter 16. We want to start thinking about pleasing people and pleasing others, and sometimes we try too hard to please other people. But if we think about little children, we realize that children naturally try to please their parents and their grandparents, and they enjoy it very much. And that's the story they want us to start with, because we need to think about pleasing God in a similar way, that it would bring joy to His life. You know, simple things do that when kids come in. They might bring their mother a dandelion and just to decorate the table. And whether mom wants a dandelion or not, it's a beautiful addition to the kitchen. And so simple things that we can do, as well as more advanced things, are what we should think about when it comes to pleasing God. Now, the context of our lesson is the whole section from chapter 15 through chapter 22. And this is the section where we're really getting the individual Proverbs of Solomon, actually beginning in chapter 10. But as it comes down, we're going to get one truth according to our lesson writer. To pursue God's wisdom means to pursue God Himself. This one truth changes everything. I think he's exactly right. When we pursue the wisdom of God, what we are in essence doing is pursuing God. Now, if you've been reading along with your Sunday School Quarterly, I hope that you have noticed that this particular writer has always taken Old Testament texts and taken us to the New Testament. He's always finding a way to plug Jesus in. And I want to say to you, I think he's right in doing this. We need to keep the Lord foremost, and we need to keep Jesus foremost. And what he's able to do is take something that was written hundreds of years earlier, and as we consider pursuing the wisdom of God and pursuing God, by coming forward to the time of Christ, he's done exactly what he needs to do. We need to pursue God. We need to pursue the wisdom of God, but we need to do it through the person of Christ, through Jesus. And we need to be able to do that. He has done that in every lesson so far. I believe that this is number 8. It is indeed number 8. And I expect he will continue to do that. And that's a good encouragement for us. Whatever we read in the Old Testament, let's see what we can do to bring it to the New Testament. When we think about the God of the Old Testament, we need to think about the Jesus of the New Testament. Now, having said that, this lesson is on the one hand simple, and on the other hand a bit confusing. I read through it and I thought, this is just a hodgepodge. This is just stuff thrown in a random way. And guess what? It is. But I went back and worked through it again, trying to figure where's the rhyme and reason in this lesson. Because the name of the title of the lesson is Pleasing God. And in the first 2 sections, there's nothing in it that has to do with pleasing God. You get to the 3rd section, you all know that most of these lessons are broken down into 3 parts when you get to the text. It's the last verse in our lesson book. It is not the last verse in the ones that are given to us. It says go through 11, but it's number 7. When a person's ways please the Lord, he makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. So it's not until the 7th verse of chapter 16 that we get the tie-in with the title. Now, why am I telling you that? Because that helps us to understand what he's doing. If you just take your book, and if you just quickly read through it, or if you just take chapter 16 in your Bible and quickly read through it, then you're going to get all these little proverbs, all these little things are just going to hit right at you, and you're going to look back and go, wow, what did I get? In fact, that's what I felt the first time I went through. Number 1 was wisdom demonstrated. Number 2 was accountability established. And then number 3, motives matter. And I said 3, there's 4 in this lesson. Blessing assured. And I'm going, wow, this is a little unusual. Maybe I'm spending too much time on this, but it helps us to learn how to read Proverbs. Because if you look at section 1, It's verse 33 of chapter 15 and verse 8 of chapter 16. He put them together in one section. And then he did the same thing in the second section. Verse 1, and then verses 4 through 5, and then verse 9. And so what he has done is pulled out from each one different aspects. And so I'm reading this and I'm trying to figure what's going on. I know that Proverbs has got to be difficult to write a lesson on and difficult to teach, because you could pick any one of the single Proverbs. And he's got a whole chapter plus a verse here that he's looking at. Primarily we're in 16. And so I began even on my own to kind of, okay, what's going on here? How has he grouped these together? And then that's when it struck me. That's exactly what he's done. He has tried to find verses that stand out so that they fit together. Even if one's here, one's here, and one's here, they kind of all fit together. And as I went through it the second or third time, guess what? He told us that's exactly what he was doing. And I missed it. So here are the instructions. If you have your book, on this particular edition, I just have the adult Sunday school books on page 74. It says, read Proverbs 15:33 through 16:11, looking for common themes. How do the common themes you identified connect to each other? Well, those are little things that we look at. We might answer, we might not. And I read that, and I went on through it, and it wasn't until about that third pass through the material that I came back and said, there it is. His assignment was to write a lesson on Proverbs 16. And the way he went about it was he read through it, and he came up with common themes. And those are your 4 points. And that works. And when you look at it that way, whether you read the little book or you read it straight through, then you start to find some consistency and you start to find some unity in the writing. Now, that is a good thing for us to think about as far as how to read or study the Bible. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 readings to do it. Instead of just having things boom, 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 look for how they connect. It's really important in the Gospel of Mark. I've been trying to do it for years in the Epistle to James, or from James. And it is just a method that you can use. Now, I think the text itself is fairly simple. That's why I'm spending a little time encouraging you when you read and it just seems like you're getting bombarded, slow down and see if you can find connections, because that's what he's done and it works for the lesson. Now, he started in chapter 15, verse 33. It's really a way of referring us back to what we've already read on a couple of occasions. The fear of the Lord is what teaches wisdom. We've heard of the fear of the Lord several times already. And so we're making a connection. So here in 15 and in earlier chapters, we find some of that unity that I was just talking about. Humility comes before honor. And he spends just a moment or two on that. And he really commented, for me, it was mostly to understand that the fear of the Lord is what serves as our teacher. The fear of the Lord is what guides us to do what's right. When I was in high school, I had a fear of the principal. Big, strong guy with a strong right arm and a long paddle. Some of you that are watching or here tonight, you remember those days. JD, bend over and grab your ankles. 3 good licks. I don't know if they do that in school anymore. I'm pretty sure they don't. But I can assure you that the fear of the principal will make you behave in school. And I think that's what we're seeing here. The fear of the Lord teaches wisdom. And with that, we learn, here's your parallel thought. Humility comes before honor. You don't go out and brag and boast and put yourself forward. You let God put you forward. He can only do that if you're humble. And so that's where we start. And that's what we need to understand. This fear of God will teach us wisdom. The second part is accountability is established. The reflections of the heart belong to mankind, verse 1, chapter 16. But the answer of the tongue is from the Lord. And I think here what we're seeing is as we consider things in our mind, in our heart, we need to consider all the options and opinions, but we need to make sure when we speak, what we are saying is from God. And so that will keep us accountable before Him. Now, there's something in here that's pretty deep, actually. I said earlier the lesson was not too hard, but there is something in here that is deep, and it takes a lot of thought, and I hope you can figure it out and be comfortable with it. I'm still trying to understand it. He says the convergence of God's sovereign rule over all things and our accountability is one of the great mysteries in Scripture. How can God be in charge of absolutely everything and we still be personally accountable? That's a good question. Because we learn God directs our steps, God directs our ways. Then how can I choose whether to go left or right? Or I go out the door. And so that is there. That's throughout Scripture. God is always in control. He's always sovereign. And yet He gives us permission to live our lives. And He knows in advance what we're going to do. And for me, one of the answers, I'll just share my answer for that. God, in His sovereignty, in His absolute control and power, has the ability to allow me some freedom. He can change my steps if He chooses to, but within that process, He allows me some freedom. And He knows exactly what I'm going to do because God knows everything and He knows the future. And the only way I can think of that is as a parent, I would sometimes know what my kids were going to do before they did it. And sometimes I could stop them and cause them to not have so much pain. But often I would let them go, let them skin that knee. And then I could deal with the problems from that point on. Some of you here in the room are watching, probably had similar experiences. In your wisdom, in your sovereignty, in your power, you let the other person have it His way. And that's, I think, one of the answers. At least that works for me. If it does for you, that's great. If not, keep thinking on it and come up with other solutions. Because I think He's hit something here that we can spend a lot of time talking about. And so that is the heart of the second part. Motives matter. This is where if I were teaching this and we had an hour in the classroom, we'd spend our time on this section right here. Motives matter. All a person's ways seem right to Him, but the Lord weighs motives. And He discusses just a little bit how sometimes it's really difficult when we want to do something that's good and not recognize that what our motives are for us to get credit or to want to do it, whether or not it's God's will. And that is something for us to be aware of. We have to really be careful with our motives. And I think that is good advice for us in all areas of our lives. Your motives count. Just doing something good is not sufficient, especially if it's doing something good that might be selfish or really for you and not for God. So make sure that your motives are correct. And he gives some examples. Verses 10 and 11 are also examples of that, and he spends some time with that. Then we move to the fourth section. I know I'm moving quickly. As I said, it's basically an easy lesson. The last part is blessing assured. And he has finished 2 or 3 lessons this way, where you seek God's wisdom, and then you are assured of His blessing at the end. Commit your activities to the Lord, and your plans will be established. So commit all that you do to the Lord. And then let God make sure that you are established, that you are successful. You do it for Him. And then in the end, he says, when a person's ways please the Lord, there's your tie-in to your title. He makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Wouldn't it be great for all the folks who don't like us or have a grudge with us or in any other way are disturbed at us or towards us or even enemies, that when we seek God's peace, we seek His ways, we find that even our enemies can't say anything against us, and that we find that we are at peace, and that we can be at peace, especially with the Lord. Now that's a lot of stuff to cover in just the first 11 verses of chapter 16. As I said, there's a whole lot of information here, but he's taken it for us, broken it down into these 4 sections so that we can get a handle on it. And all we're looking at is chapter 16. So I want to encourage you to read it if you've not already, and maybe come up with your own little list. That's what he said right here. Put your own grouping together so that you can better understand chapter 16. Then you know what you can do? Go ahead and do that for 17 and 18 and 19 as well. Because when you start doing that, what you're going to find is that the book of Proverbs is a lot more than just about 33 individual statements over a number of chapters. There is more to it than that, and our lesson writer has done a good job of pointing that out to us. Well, thank you for watching, and enjoy your Sunday school material. Read the scriptures. See you again next time.